I am enjoying the rhetoric. Frankly, Bernie Sanders should just treat Donald Trump as a lame duck president and then push for all of his policies. Bernie Sanders needs to have a press conference where he invites other presidential hopefuls and then they give little 5-minute speeches. But, Bernie Sanders, well, I guess he doesn't have to lead the thing. He just has to be there because right now, the race is on. He's running campaign ads, so this is all for the campaign. This is all about 2020, and this is the shooting of El Paso has really been a turning point. I haven't seen anything like this, and because the Democrats are running against it, I'm enjoying the rhetoric. I'm enjoying, the political theater of it all. Beto O'Rourke is right to call Donald Trump out and say, don't even come to El Paso. It's your damn rhetoric, your damn racism that brings all this shit on. And then it's right for Donald Trump to show up. And I don't know what he did. I don't know if he just showed up and talked to a couple folks. I don't know if he made a big speech or not. His little speech, 10-minute speech wasn't very inspiring. It just seems like, okay, shit, I got to do something. So he went out there and just spit out some ideas. And perhaps, something will become of it. Eric Swalwell, he's actually having an impact on U.S. policy already. So because the debates control the narrative of the nation, Joe Biden and all these other candidates were talking about essentially modest gun reform, background checks, and assault on a ban on assault weapons, and closing the loophole and some other shit. But Joe Biden is calling for a massive gun buyback program. And he also says, yep, I'm coming for your assault rifles. I'm coming for your guns. So whereas Obama was hesitant to say that, but Obama's the one that actually, stood up against the racist gun owners of America. I bet they shit a brick when he did that. I was nervous on his behalf, but Eric Swalwell is the one that got Bernie Sanders to agree to a gun buyback program. And so Joe Biden mentioned that he knew about smartphones and this and that option, but now the gun buyback program is the, I don't want to say brainchild, but Eric Swalwell pushed for this, even got Bernie Sanders to agree to it, and now Joe Biden is calling for it. So this is going to be, the government is going to put out money, and they want to buy all these assault. That's going to be a Joe Biden plan. They're going to buy all the assault rifles. So Joe Biden said that Donald is more like George Wallace than George Washington. And I like that he's bringing up George Wallace. They're both GWs. George Wallace is a bigger, racist than most people. George Wallace is probably the last racist, the last segregationist, the last person to consent to that, integration. So George Wallace's famous, most iconic moment is when he's standing at the doorways of, I want to say it was Alabama University, but a university in Alabama that was going, about to be integrated. But nope, George Wallace says states' rights. He stood in front of the doorway, and then I think the Kennedy brothers ordered him, or maybe it was Eisenhower, but they put National Guards out there to, essentially 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision, so essentially to enforce federal law. So I like how Joe Biden brought up George Wallace, but George Washington, the guy who owned 300 fucking slaves, George Washington. So I would actually make the argument George Washington's way bigger fucking racist than George Wallace. George Wallace didn't own slaves. He wasn't whipping slaves. He wasn't beating slaves. He wasn't raping slaves. He didn't have slaves in a pen. He didn't boss them around. He didn't have the entire nation, the whole country, make sure that society had instituted slavery. Yeah, the puppy genocide, George Washington made, he didn't want none of his slaves to own any dogs, and so he put all the dogs, including the puppies, to death. So killed everybody's puppies, right? So not even slaves can own a little puppy, give them a little friendship, give them a little... Nope, not even the slaves could have dogs, not under George Washington's reign. So for millennials, George Wallace is, one of the last popular white male politicians who was opposed to integration and was probably the last one to consent to integrate. So George Wallace and segregation, they both are one and the same, right? George Wallace was also a third-party candidate. He wound up winning like a whole bunch of states, surprisingly. He could have there was something, he was close to the presidency or something about, I don't know, something about something. So he was also a populist. So even though he was a racist piece of shit, I think his argument was essentially separate but equal, right? It's better for blacks and whites just to be separate. We just can't get along. But he was a populist, so he actually had like populist economic sort of ideas. So it wasn't all just racism, right? He actually had to say something else besides just the racism. But his most famous saying was, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. So sorry, George Wallace, your segregation legacy is dead, you racist piece of shit. And now, I like how Joe Biden brought up George Wallace, but Joe Biden actually was given an award from George Wallace, which he accepted. Joe Biden's friend with all these, white supremacists and segregationists. He's opposed to busing, so he was opposed to the integration. So him and George Wallace are actually pretty identical, so it's interesting that he's going to pitch George Wallace out there as somebody to compare with Donald Trump to. So George Wallace was an unapologetic segregationist, so he was an unapologetic white nationalist, white supremacist, segregationist. And I'm not sure what I'm trying to say there. I'm just comparing George Wallace to Donald Trump. So he was an unapologetic segregationist, unapologetic racialist. I guess I would say probably a racist too. He's for segregation, wise, separate but equal, but we're all the same. So that would make him a racist through and through. So is Donald Trump like George Wallace? He's not in favor of segregation, but is he racist through and through? And to be honest with you, I guess I'm feeling like he's a racist. And it's just because of his racist rhetoric. He's a lot of racialist stuff. So he actually says that white people are people, whereas some people on the liberal side don't think they're fucking people, which is ridiculous. I even had someone suggest that it's just men. Maybe it's the genetics of men. Something about just the genetics of... Maybe it's because everybody loves women. It's just easier for them. And men are just at each other's throats. So it's a dog-eat-dog culture for men, but women support women. Men love women. So, I mean, at least women got some people that's got their back. I feel like men, it's really... Anyways, okay, so it's hurting everybody. So Joe Biden's going to be, he's going to get an award from George Wallace. He's going to make sure none of the black kids can go to the white schools, so that's hurting everybody. He's for the 94 crime bill, which is massive incarceration, throw a bunch of blacks and whites into jail. So his racism isn't helping anybody. It's, hurting black folks, but also the white folks too, right? So white people are going to get thrown in jail, and then white folks aren't going to get the diversity of actually going to school with everybody in America. So that's the only thing I can say good about public schools is that they integrated America, and Joe Biden was like, nope, not going to do it, because he's not a progressive. He's a conservative. He runs to the right every time. Every progressive idea that's thrown in his face, the guns and the death penalty thing, that just seems like that's liberal, like yuppie progressive shit for the yuppies. That's what the rich middle-class liberals talk about. I'm morally opposed to the death penalty. Okay, then we should get rid of it for everybody. I don't know. I mean, Timothy McVeigh was one of the last people that we put to death, and I think that was actually that was 100%. This whole thing is about the Central Park 5 case, okay? So Donald is mocked for saying, God bless Toledo, right? You got a shooting in Dayton and in El Paso. Donald gets up there and he's like, God bless Toledo. Just for the hell of it, right? Who knows? Maybe they knew people in Dayton, You don't know what Toledo's going through, so God bless Toledo. And they said that his teleprompter actually didn't say it, so he misread Texas. He's Toledo. He did seem to stumble because he was like, oops, messed up there. But Joe Biden isn't any better. Joe Biden also falsely referred to the shooting as being in Michigan and Houston. So Jesus Christ. Essentially, when it comes to Joe Biden and Donald Trump's racism, they're neck and neck when it comes to their incompetence because they're old-ass, pieces of shit. That's the Democrats' plan, to put up their own bumbling, old-ass, racist piece of shit up against this other bumbling, old-ass, racist piece of shit incumbent. Okay, well, so all we got is just a bunch of racist, bumbling fucking fools. Okay, good job, Democrats. Joe Biden's 2.0, Hillary Clinton, so you Hillary fucks, fuck you pricks. You guys are going to be the last motherfuckers to join Bernie Sanders. Nixon says when it comes to the people that say, don't vote, if there's a Stop X movement, vote on X. So the fact that Democrats, the Hillary supporters, neoliberals especially, are saying, let's stop Bernie, anybody but Bernie, bet on Bernie. Bet on Bernie. And so that's, give you a little politics 101 there. So yeah, when it comes to our sick society, so they'll push for gun control and the death penalty, right? That's yuppie leftist views. But when it actually comes to getting to the root of the problem, have a war on poverty, actually pulling people up out of poverty, making sure people are actually in safe positions, make sure there's no child abuse, make sure there's no homelessness, to end the wars, to end the war on drugs, to stop the authoritarianism, the police are out of control, to actually have the police and the court system defend the citizens and the people of our democracy. There's a lot of things that need to, that need fixing. So just putting a Band-Aid on, okay, we banned some guns. You feel better about yourselves now? We changed something, and that was a major change. I don't see the Second Amendment going away, so at the very least, you're going to be able to keep your pistols and handguns and rifles and shotguns. But what are we going to do with all the rest of the weapons? For liberals, I feel like just for your own self-defense, you're going to give all the weapons to Donald Trump? Just give him all the weapons. He's got the nukes and the tanks. Just give him everybody's weapons. Then we'll all be safe. So a lot of this has to do with just the media pushing it. They know that there's no. It's kind of they're being irresponsible. They're pushing a bunch of people to get all pissed off about this shit, and then nobody does anything, and then what? Now we're just left with goddamn a dick in our hands. And so what good did that do? So everybody got all pissed off and they pushed for this one thing, it didn't work, and now where are we at? We haven't been talking about it, so I'm glad we're making a step forward, but we could actually fix this, Donald Trump, he put a campaign ad out in the Dayton newspaper. So Donald Trump is in campaign mode. He's approved his advertising messages on YouTube ads. So he's already in campaign mode. He's already campaigning for 2020. All this is about the campaign. So the Democrats and the Republicans are both saying, oh, your rhetoric, your rhetoric. It's going to be like this up until Election Day. So I would say this probably El Paso shooting has really started the 2020 campaign. So Beto O'Rourke and Joe Biden, I think they're going at the right pace. He said something about losing his fastball. Nah, Joe Biden and Beto O'Rourke are coming at Donald Trump. They're the ones, they believe in gun control. So Bernie Sanders kind of does. He's for modest gun control, so I can see why he's not, tackling this as much. Beto, this is right in his backyard. And Joe Biden's taking some, pretty decent shots. They're asking about, what he thinks about this stuff, and he's, getting some rounds. So, Donald, he doesn't have I would like to see him throw a fastball. I'd like to see Donald actually go to Yankee Stadium and he'd be like Donald or Dick Cheney. Yeah, Joe Biden loves Dick Cheney, by the way. Segregationist Dick Cheney. Good men, good folks, just good old Dick Cheney. Good old Dick. Donald Trump doesn't have a jump shot or a three-point shot. He doesn't have any good field plans for football games. I'd love to see Donald pitch. Toss a pitch out in Yankee Stadium, Donald. Please do that for me. 1985 Central Park case. They're convicted but exonerated. So just a quick, short thing. Donald Trump still talks about how the Central Park Five are guilty. This is why Donald Trump should not be given the power to put people to death. So as much as I believe in for the most heinous circumstances, yes, of course. But when it comes to Donald Trump, will I give Donald Trump the power to execute people? No, I don't think that Donald Trump needs to. That's more. Let's stop the glorification of violence. Now let's start executing motherfuckers left and right. It would allay my concerns of his racism. If he's putting these white supremacists to death, that sends a strong message to any other white racist piece of shit that wants to do something ever again. That'll be it. That'll be the last of them. They're not going to get their way, and it's going to be worse. So you have to make this, you got to turn this into a negative. The thing that he did is a horrible massacre. You can't, get immigration reform. That's what he was aiming for. So you can't do anything that he wanted to, get done. And I bet you he wants to live. I bet you he wants to keep on living. And, probably wants Donald Trump to put a pin and medal on him and say, thanks, soldier, for, doing my bidding. But instead of that happening, if he went ahead and put the guillotine on them, and then, you know, that would be a clear signal to the racist, bigoted, Nazi, KKK, Confederate pieces of shit that think about opening fire based on some racist shit for doing some political terrorism based on Donald Trump's words. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. That would send a clear message to his base that this is not the shit. He's not going to put up with this shit. So if he's strong enough to, you know, stand up to his base and push for it. But the Central Park 5 case, so whereas Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, Kamala Harris is against the death penalty 100% through and through. Joe Biden, he just became, you know, just started being against the death penalty just recently. So he's a newbie when it comes to anti-death penalty sentiment. He actually increased it 61 new offenses under the 1994 crime bill. So he actually added, you know, a lot more reasons why the federal government can execute people. But Kamala Harris is through and through opposed to the death penalty. So it's a strong contrast between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Now, if I had a choice between having somebody who is too liberal or too conservative on the death penalty, would I rather have somebody who's just executing people left and right, whether they're guilty or not, versus somebody who doesn't execute anybody, even people that probably deserve it? I'm going to choose the latter. I'm going to choose the peaceful one. The one that's killing people left and right who could be innocent. That's some bullshit. So Donald Trump, he pushed for the Central Park 5 to be executed. And he, you know, when it comes to what he believes, even 2016, so just 3 years ago, he's talking about how he thought that they were guilty. Now, I only know just what I've researched for today. But essentially, they're not guilty of raping this lady. Maybe they're doing some shit that they shouldn't have been doing that night, and they're going to admit to a bunch of shit. They were pressured and bullied to, you know, essentially the father of one of them just said, you know, just tell them that you did it. Just admit that you did it, then they said that you could leave. And so, yeah, they got the evidence, you know, that they were guilty of this crime, and then it took 7 years of his life away. So don't ever admit it. Tell the truth always. Stick to the truth, because... So in 2002, their convictions are going to be overturned. It's going to be vacated by a court. And then in 2014, the Central Park 5 are going to get $41 million. In 2016, they're going to get $4 million from the New York City, the government of New York City, and the government of New York State. So combined of $45 million. So that's like the OJ thing. He wasn't guilty in criminal court, but he was criminally liable for, you know, the cash. So... nobody, you know, goes to jail on this. None of the, I don't know if there's malicious prosecution or how this whole thing goes down, but it does sound like from start to finish, they, you know, are not guilty of this specific crime of raping this woman. So April 19th, 1989, they found Tricia Meili, M-E-I-L-I. So Tricia Meili, who's a 28-year-old white woman. She's jogging in the park, and she's attacked and she's raped. And then she's going to go into a coma for 12 days. I think the New York Times said this is the most publicized, you know, individual crime ever. So just some regular, Tricia Meili, I think, actually was an investment banker, so she was rich and important, right? So she's a rich white woman. And the attackers had also attacked 8 other people that night, including 3 people of color. So there's this roving, you know, gang that's just going around wolfpacking and attacking people. And the police just arrested a bunch of kids and then essentially, you know, pushed them into confessing the shit that they didn't do. All their testimonies are crisscrossing. So they all said that they were around when the rape happened. So they're all accomplices of this rape by what they admitted to. But how it went down, they all had different stories. So I almost feel like it's not this person. It was some other shit that was going down. So I don't think that they're 100%. It doesn't feel like they're 100% innocent of just nothing. But some of them was. One guy, he was just, you know, a friend. He just went there for support, and then eventually they started harassing him, and he wound up getting the biggest sentence overall. So there's 5 of them, right, and so I would have to listen to their testimony specific for each one. But for this case, they were innocent of, you know, there is no murder. She lives, but they did not, you know, she didn't get raped. Tricia Meili, 28-year-old white woman, by the Central Park 5. Why do we know that? because Matthias Rees, R-E-Y-E-S, he's in jail in 2001, 2002. He confesses to the crime. He knows all this information, exactly what happened, what she was wearing, how the branch, so I think she gets hit in the head with the branch and then gets hit in the head with a rock. But one of the boys had said something about a knife, so they added some, extra details to the thing. So, they're being bullied and tortured into making all these false confessions. The father even told the woman to lie. He said he didn't even today he hasn't forgiven him because what a fucking pussy. What a bitch-ass pussy, basically fucking over your child just because he was scared. So, the Matthias Rees confessed to the crime, said he's the one that raped Trisha, and only him and only him. He's in prison for life, so he's got no reason to lie. He's in there for rape and murder, and he raped like 3 other people. His DNA matched 2 DNA semen samples. So the semen samples, there was a sock that was around, and then there's semen that was, on, I guess, her. And so the DNA matched to Matthias Rees. So he confessed to it. He knew a lot of details to the thing. His DNA is matched, so essentially that's exonerated him. The Central Park 5 had spent between 6 to 13 years in jail. So the one who spent the most, 13 years in jail. He was 16 years old when he went to jail, and he was 29, nearly 30 when he got out. So that's the prime of his life. That's his teens and his 20s. He's already 30 years old. So he was, I think Corey was his name. The statute of limitations meant that Matthias Rees couldn't be tried for that crime, so much time had passed. It was 1989, and so much time. It was 12 years. So something that happened 12 years ago, a violent rape. Well, it was a violent rape that was 12 years ago. I'm glad that he stood up and actually told the truth. And because of that, the convictions are going to be overturned. So it's kind of crazy that one of the Central Park 5 ran into Matthias Rees, and this Matthias Rees felt bad. He was like, shit, man, you're still in here? You're still in here for something I had done? You're in here for 10, 15, 16 years for something? So he just fessed up because he felt bad about it. So it's crazy that that coincidence had happened. In 2002, their convictions were overturned or vacated by a court. New York City again paid him $45 million or $41 million. New York State $4 million, and then 2016, Donald still talks about how he thinks that they're guilty. So does he think O.J. Simpson is innocent? O.J. is innocent, but here you have $45 million in court winnings that said that they did not rape Trisha Melney. They did not rape her. They were not the ones. Whoever, it was Matthias Rees that did it. So if they were going to try to convict him of, essentially doing the crimes that they thought that they were talking about, but they admitted to some other stuff, and they're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? No, why don't you say your stuff first? And so the big lesson to all this, when it comes to the death penalty, he's pushing for, there's 4 things. We're going to ban the internet, and we're going to ban freedom of speech, and everybody's going to get lockstep with the Nazis. What did he say? He said something about there's the red flag laws. We need to do something with mental health. Red flag laws, mental health. Red flag laws, mental health. The bump stocks, I don't know. Something else, but there is a death penalty too. So, the whole thing about the death penalty, I would rather trust Kamala Harris to be the prosecutor, to be the president. And in general, we don't execute people. In the last, we've only executed Tim McVeigh was 2001, and then we executed someone in 2003. So George W. Bush was able to execute 3 people. So fantastic. God, we just opened this millennium up, fantastically, right? Tim McVeigh, most people would say he killed 200 people, so he deserved to die. You do make martyrs out of them, but there is no, love lost for me. I lost no sleep over that. So the 3 cases, this is the last time we did it there. So since 2003, for 5 years, Baby Bush didn't execute anybody. For 8 years, Obama didn't execute anybody. And then under Trump, so far, nobody's been executed. And I'm going to get more into the death penalty, but when it comes to Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, I trust Kamala Harris. She's very staunchly against the death penalty. That's probably her thing. She is against the death penalty. Even there's a cop killer, and she still protected that guy who is just, you know, essentially murdered in cold blood and protected his life. So she believes in it. She took a lot of heat for that, a lot of pressure for that. And she's typically, you know, right-wing on a lot of things, but when it comes to the death penalty, I trust Kamala Harris a million times more than I trust Donald Trump. So, especially because of the Central Park 5. He pushed for 5 innocent people to die. 5 innocent people of this crime. So if you looked in the court case, I don't understand why they're admitting to doing anything, 5 of them, that they were pressured, sleep-deprived, you know, kind of tortured, put in solitary, whatever they were doing to them. And then what were they admitting to? If they're admitting to doing stuff, they were just make it up. Just make it up and pretend. Why would the police need to go to jail for that type of shit too? So, yeah, I think it's a good case to talk about because they won a lot of money. So that usually indicates, you know, a jury looked at it and they said, yeah, they're right. They're right. 40 million. You know, they deserve $41 million. That's how right they are. It's like Eric Garner, right? Their family won, you know, millions of dollars. And then people are going to be like, well, I don't know. I don't think it was a crime. Murder? You don't think murder is a crime? Apparently, with the laws on the books, murder is the only crime that the death penalty can be applied to. So, yeah, because of Central Park 5, don't trust Jan Fuhrer.